Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Department of Energy's SBIR STTR Programs Office Phase 2 Release 1 FOA webinar. My name is Zina Al-Yusuf. I am with the DOE SBIR Programs Office, and I will moderate today's webinar. Today's presenter is Eileen Chant, the SBIR STTR Outreach Program Manager. Eileen will provide you with an overview of the background and impetus of the DOE second Phase 2 awards, Phase 2A or Phase 2B as we refer to it, third Phase 2 awards or Phase 2C, and the application process. We will conclude with a question and answer session. So during this webinar, you may submit questions via the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen, and Eileen will address these as time permits. If you have a question relating to the technical content of your proposal, please submit those questions directly to the Phase 2 Program Manager. And lastly, we will post the recording of the webinar along with a copy of the presentation on the DOE SBIR website under the Funding Opportunities webpage. Again, welcome. And now let's begin. Eileen.
Thank you, Zina, and hello, everyone. I'm Eileen Chan, as Zina mentioned, the Outreach Program Manager with DOE, SBIR, STTR. So let's get started. Although this webinar is focused on the second and third Phase 2 award, Phase 2A, 2B, and 2C, I am going to start by going over a few new application requirements, things that are new or new-ish in our programs, just as reminders for additional things that you may not be aware of. So first of all, I'm going to start what's new in the Phase 2 application process. Then I will cover the second Phase 2 award, 2A, 2B, and then I will cover the specifics of the third Phase 2 award, which is for SBIR only, Phase 2C. We began implementing the second Phase 2 awards in fiscal year 2014, and we began implementing the third Phase 2 awards in fiscal year 2019 with the second Phase 2 release. A little bit about terminology before we dive in. The statute calls your Phase 2 award as the first Phase 2 award. The second Phase 2 award, the statute calls it the sequential Phase 2 award. And the third, what we call the third Phase 2 award, it is referred to as a subsequent Phase 2 award in statute. This is new-ish, but about a year ago, we developed a new Phase 2 application webpage. If you are new to the Phase 2 grant application, you can look at this page as a reminder, and it does cover the key differences between creating a Phase 1 and creating a Phase 2 application. It also has a number of resources as well, templates in particular for as part of your Phase 2 application. I do want to mention that we did just develop and release a few months ago a Phase 1 online application guide. Here is the URL to it. There are many resources in this guide that are suitable for Phase 2 applications. It does replace our Phase 1 application guide that was a PDF document that you downloaded that was on our website. But it does house all our application resources. So it does have things like how to prepare an LOI, how to develop your peer plan, a number of form downloads and examples. So this also could be a resource for you in your phase 2 application work. A reminder, if you are anticipating utilizing TABA services, technical and business assistance programs, you must select your own vendor and include the additional funding and the vendor specifics in your application. You get up to $50,000 for TABA services, which is over the max award amount. So you do not want to miss out on these funds by neglecting to include a TABA vendor, TABA budget, and letter of commitment as well. So your budget, if you're requesting 1.1 million for research and development and 50,000 for TABA, your total budget request would be $1,150,000. The phase 2 services could include a number of things. This information is in the FOA and it is also on our website, but it does help you with your commercialization execution, market research, regulatory landscape, intellectual property landscape, developing your pitch deck, supporting your networking activities, and lots more. And just a reminder, as I go through this, we will be doing Q&A at the end. Please put your questions in the Q&A box as you think of them. You can do it now. And so that when we get to the end of the presentation, we'll be answering the questions. This is another change that it's not particularly new, but just as a reminder, if you have received a prior phase 2 award, which I guess all of this group is in the middle of a phase 2 award, but if you've completed a phase 2 award, Carl, can I just go ahead and ask you, is that correct? If you have had completed a phase 2 award, this requirement applies to you rather than people who are maybe in the middle of their first phase 2 award.
That's correct. It has to be a completed award.
Thank you. And I will mention we have Carl Hebron, who is one of our application specialists on the call as well. Thanks, Carl. So you must provide your company commercialization report, which is generated on SBIR.gov. Awardees are required to update and maintain your organization's CCR on SBIR.gov. This is an SBA policy directive. Companies may complete this report by logging onto the company account, your company account on SBIR.gov and starting a new company commercialization report. Unfortunately, there's a little glitchy aspect to our application process, which if you're submitting an SBIR or a both SBIR, STTR application, you attach your CCR to question 8 of SBIR, SBTTR information form, if this requirement applies. If it is only STTR, that question 8 unfortunately disappears, and you can't put it there, so the CCR then will be attached to field 12 of the research and related other project information form. And there's more information in the FOA on generating this report. Okay, and this is a requirement that began in fiscal year 2023, so it is 1 year old, but you are now required with your application to submit a disclosure of foreign relationships using the form that is on our grant application page. The version that's there have been a couple of versions. Right now, the version that's posted now is version 6. Please use that version. And it is a requirement, so do not forget it. And you attach it to field 12 of the research and related other project information form. Even if your small business has no foreign relationships, please be aware that you must complete the form and sign it to certify that.
And to Eileen's point, I mean, basically the fact that if you do not include that form, then you could be declined. So please adhere to the requirements that you include the form.
Thank you, Carl. And another very important thing, this is new to fiscal year 2024, is the marking of proprietary data. As awardees, you've done it in the past, but it has changed. And we hope that you agree that this is an easier way of doing it and less onerous. So certain documents are allowed to contain proprietary information. The commercialization plan and the project narrative are examples of documents that can contain proprietary information. And there's a new marking requirement, which I'll go over on the next slide. But please note that the SBIR commercialization history and the foreign relations disclosure forms are also permitted to contain proprietary information, but they do not require the applicant markings because they are pre-populated with data protection legends. So here's how it works. On the title or first page of the document containing proprietary information, you must put this legend on. I won't read the whole thing, but it ends here with the bold. And in the bold, you will be, you put that legend in, and in the bold, you will insert page numbers or other identifications of pages that contain no restricted information. Okay, so that's different than what we used to do. And the following legend appears on each page of the proposal that contains information the applicant wishes to protect. So there are no more highlighting, no more stars or brackets. You need to put this legend on pages that contain information that you wish to protect. So a little easier. Another new requirement in fiscal year 2024 is that your application must include a plan of how your small business is promoting inclusive and equitable research. So we've added this. The Office of Science added it, which we are a part of, the Office of Science. They added this requirement in fiscal year 2023, and we delayed adoption for 1 year, and we have just adopted it now that it's fiscal year 2024. And I will mention that technology development and incorporation of DEIA are not mutually exclusive. In fact, research has shown that the strongest solution sets come from teams who recognize the importance of diversity of thought and reasoning to good, sound scientific discovery. It is a requirement for all proposals submitted to the Office of Science. They are provided. You write your project narrative and you attach your peer plan. It's between 1 and 3 pages. The plan should describe the activities and strategies that the investigators and research personnel will incorporate to promote DEIA in their research projects. The peer plan is part of a new merit review criterion. I'll go over that a little bit more in the subsequent slide. Funds may be requested for the execution of peer plan. If you're hiring, let's say, an underrepresented intern, you may include that in your direct funding dollars. If you're doing some type of a training activity or for an underrepresented employee, then that might fall into the indirect category as well. So you just kind of use the cost guidelines that you've always used when you think about what that particular activity is and where it should go in your budget. And the peer plan should be really integral to the research project. So it can't be something like a kindergarten STEM outreach program that has nothing to do with the research project. It has to do with integrating DEIA activities into your research project. Additionally, and importantly, is that the complexity and detail of a peer plan should scale with the number of personnel to be supported and the size of the phase 1 award. So in the DOE scheme of things, 200,000, I'm sorry, so it's a 1.1 million to 1.6 million for phase 2. And it's a 2-year program typically. So you just want to think about what is kind of reasonable for something of that size and that length of time, what you can accomplish.
So Eileen, can I just emphasize one point that you just made, and that is that the peer plan is an appendix to the project narrative. I think we've seen several cases where, it was not added as an appendix, and we had to go back to the applicant.
Thank you. You're going through, they're going through the phase 1 applications right now, so you're seeing some of the mistakes. So that's very important.
Yep.
So when you PDF your project narrative, your peer plan should be in that PDF. And it does not count towards the word count or the page count of the project narrative. It's separate in that regard, but it is part of that PDF.
Thank you.
So applicants are encouraged to focus on areas including but not limited to the composition of the project team and partnering institutions, the research environment, cultivating respectful, professional, and accessible environments, equitable and inclusive implementation of the research project, and or partnering with underrepresented institutions and or underserved communities. So not all peer plans are going to have all of these elements, but these are the things that you can think about as elements of your peer plan. So since you all are awardees, you're familiar with the technical merit review criteria in the past, which was these 3 criteria were equally weighted. But now we have the peer plan as an additional application review criteria. The first 3 are equally weighted and are of greater weight than the 4th criterion. So that the majority of the review criteria are the top 3, with a small slice given to the peer consideration of the peer plan in the award decision. There are resources here. We have developed a web page on the peer plan. Please visit the web page. It has, I think, a lot of good information. So I'm going to just give a list of what are suitable topics for peer plans. I know people are always it's a new requirement. I do want to emphasize that we understand that you all are small businesses. You don't need to have the kind of peer plan that a university would expect to have, a large university or a large corporation. Try to keep in mind that you're a small business and, pick some sort of meaningful, focused activity in developing your peer plan. That is like my recommendation. It is about moving the needle within your company. It's not about comparing you with what larger organizations are doing. So with that said, mentoring currently underrepresented persons that are at your company in STEM and entrepreneurship and providing them with career advancement opportunities, hiring underrepresented interns and or staff, providing professional development training and leadership experience to UR persons that are integral to the project, provide professional learning and educational opportunities to small business employees to develop more awareness, knowledge, and strategies for supporting diverse and innovative work environments, partnering with a minority serving institution such as a historically Black college and university, engaging with organizations in the project that represent underserved communities as a core element of their mission, including minority business entities and nonprofit or community-based organizations. Implementing inclusive workplace practices in your small business, inclusion of community advisory boards or other relevant steering committees to inform technology development, technology development with future community benefit and or equity, energy equity implications for disadvantaged communities should the technology development be successful, such as reduction in household energy burdens, reduction in environmental exposure, energy infrastructure resilience, and future workforce impacts and opportunities. Projects that will lead to cleanup of legacy nuclear waste and mitigate existing pollutions for unaffected communities and partnering with that community. This list is on the peer plan website web page that I mentioned before, so you can take a deeper look at all of this information there. Okay, and finally, the final new requirement, and this is only for phase 2 applications. You do have to complete and include a cybersecurity self-assessment with your phase 2 application. This is part of the SBIR STTR Extension Act of 2022, in which Congress extended the SBIR program for 3 years. So the cybersecurity piece and also the foreign relationship form, both of those are a result of that legislation and its requirements. Our office is going to host a specific webinar dedicated to this requirement on Tuesday, October 24th, between 3 and 4 p.m. Eastern Time, cybersecurity self-assessments for phase 2 applicants. And you should mark it on your calendar. You will receive an invitation as an eligible phase 2 applicant. So please plan to attend. If for any reason you can't attend, the webinar will be recorded and made available on our website. And then I just want to mention the phase 2 diversity supplement. This is not part of your application. Supplement applications are submitted by awardees in December, prior to the second summer of your award. And this is a program to improve the diversity of the research workforce by recruiting and supporting students from groups that have shown to be underrepresented in federal SBIR, STTR research programs. It is up to $20,000 in additional funding to support a recruited student for a 10-week summer internship. All phase 2 awardees are eligible. Note that this is different from the peer plan because it's something that occurs after you receive your award. It's not necessarily suitable for your peer plan. You can certainly mention it, but it also is not cannot really be a standalone peer plan because you cannot necessarily guarantee that you are going to be awarded the diversity supplement. We do have a fairly broad definition of diversity, and you can visit some of the resources that are shown here and also our website. Okay, now I'm going to go into phase 2A and phase 2B awards. Phase 2A, some projects are unable to be completed within 2 years and require more time and funding to be completed. We understand that these are research and development projects. Research and development is something that takes unexpected turns. And so in this case, we do have the 2A award available for you to be able to complete your phase 2 research and development. Note that DOE program managers select the topics and subtopics for which phase 2A applications will be accepted. So your topic must be listed in the FOA in order to apply for the phase 2A award. You can see page 13 of the FOA, and I'm going to show the table on the next page. Okay. Phase 2A awards start immediately upon completion of your initial phase 2 award. There's no gap based on the timing of the 2 and the 2A. And just be careful if you're planning to submit a phase 2A application. You don't want to request a no-cost extension that would interfere with or go past the beginning of the phase 2A award. So you need to get your phase 2 project done before the 2A award starts.
Eileen, can I add to that?
Please do.
And that is, for the phase 2A, it's very important that you have communication with your program manager, so that manager will know that you are still in need of additional funding to complete your phase 2 effort. So it's very important that you maintain some communication with your program manager.
Yep, that's right. They should be aware of what the actual R&D, additional R&D needs are. So if you are here, you have your phase 2 award, you are in the process of, you were awarded your phase 2 award in fiscal year 2022, and you are nearing the completion of that. You're going to submit, if you're going to submit your phase 2 application coming up here with this cycle, you will, if you are awarded, there will be no gap between the end of phase 2 and start of phase 2A, and you only have one opportunity to submit the phase 2A award. Application. Okay, so moving on to phase 2B. After successfully completing a phase 2, you may require, it's a little bit of a different emphasis in this case, maybe something changed about the market, the technology developments, etc. You may have shifted focus or direction in terms of your technology development because of changes in the commercialization landscape. And so in this case, phase 2B is for additional R&D funding to transition an innovation toward commercialization. Maybe you got all your phase 2 R&D done, but the way things have sort of shifted, you require more R&D to transition to commercialization. So we are utilizing phase 2B in this case to increase the number of positive commercialization outcomes. And you'll see in a later slide that our phase 2B program is relatively well utilized. And you have 2 opportunities to submit a phase 2 application. Just like with 2A, you can submit it immediately after completing your phase 2 or 1 year later. So those who are eligible right now for submitting a phase 2B application for this fiscal year 2024 solicitation could be those who were awarded in fiscal year 2022 a phase 2, and they're submitting now, there will be no gap, or those who were awarded a phase 2 in fiscal year 2021 and have had they may have, depending on if there were no cost extensions, but if there were no cost extensions, then there would have been a 1 year gap, and you may submit a phase 2 application in that case as well for phase 2B. Okay, so for both 2A and 2B, the maximum award amount is 1.1 million for up to 2 years. As always, is the case with all of our applications, the award amounts and the duration of the award require justification. These are not separate funding pots. All DOE, this money comes from the whole pot of SBIR and STTR allocation. There's no target number of awards. It really depends on the number and the quality of all the phase 2 applications received under the FOA, because we receive phase 2 applications, we receive 2A, 2B, and 2C. So it's sort of a balancing act in terms of the number of awards that are made for each of the phase 2 type of award. So this information is in the FOA, but remember that the program managers select the eligible topics for which applicants can apply. So you will have had to receive your phase 2 award in fiscal year 2022. And you must have received your award under these particular topics shown here, C49 and C51. Okay, so for phase 2, the review criteria for phase 2A is largely identical to that for an initial phase 2 with the following difference. You, in addition to submitting your phase 1 final report, which you did at the end of your phase 1 award, you do have to submit your phase 2 project interim report or your final report, depending on where you, if you've finished your report or your phase 2 award. And again, as stated before, the first 3 review criteria are equally weighted and are of greater weight than the peer plan criteria, but the peer plan criteria is part of the merit review. Okay, for 2B, grantees from fiscal year 21 and fiscal year 22, phase 2 funding opportunities, for this would be release 1, and topics may apply for phase 2 awards. So you can, this is for the fiscal year 2021 phase 2 FOA listing of eligible topics. And this is the listing for fiscal year 2022 eligible topics for a phase 2B application. Remember, you can be just finishing your phase 2 award, or you can have had 1 year. You can have received a fiscal year 2021 phase 2 award and have a year gap under your belt at this point. So for phase 2B, a greater importance is placed on impact. You may know that from past applications. So the technical merit, the ability to carry out the project, the impact is going to be about twice the weighting of the first 2 criteria, and the peer plan again is going to be of lesser consideration. So the peer plan is going to be something that if you have a very strong technical application, the peer plan may or may not affect depending on how well it's rated, it may or may not affect your ability to get an award. If you have a marginally, you have an application that's sort of on the margins of being funded or not being funded, the peer plan can push you over or maybe drop you down a notch. And finally, if you have a weak application, the peer plan is probably not going to help you receive funding. I hope that's an okay way to think about it, or how it will work. Just a reminder, all of our applications require letters of intent, and in this case, it's due on November 7th by 5 p.m. Eastern Time, and it is submitted through PAMS. We do not provide feedback on phase 2 letters of intent. They are just utilized so that we understand the applications that will be coming in December, and so we can set up our technical reviewer pool.
And this is a good point because at one point we did not require letters of intent for phase 2 applicants, but now that is a requirement.
That's right. It's fairly new. I don't know how new it is, but a couple of years, I guess.
A couple of years. We've utilized this requirement for several years now.
Remember that again, I made this point before, but your initial phase 2 project must be completed by the beginning of your second phase 2 award. So keep that in mind. Make your plans in order to make sure that you've completed your initial phase 2 award by April 1st, 2024, which is when these the anticipated award grant start date for the second phase 2 awards. And the same with the phase 2B. You want to make sure that you're going to finish your initial phase 2 by April 1st in order to be able to begin your phase 2B award. And then here's some statistics on the fiscal year 2023 phase 2 application and award statistic. Phase 2 success rate was about 33%, still a little bit lower than past years. 2A, we received 40 applicants. We gave 17 awards. That's a 43% award rate. And phase 2B, we received 66 applications and gave 16 awards. And we only received one phase 2C application, and that one was not recommended for funding. So just so you know how the past phase 2 awards were distributed. So if you have a phase 2 award, you may only submit one phase 2 application per phase 2 project. So you cannot go ahead and submit a 2A and a 2B right now with a solicitation. But however, if you apply for a phase 2A award this year and don't receive it, you may apply for a phase 2B next year. If you apply for a phase 2B award this year and do not receive it, you may, and then it's your first year that you're eligible for the 2B award, you may apply again for the phase 2B next year. But please speak to your program manager about the reason for not receiving. Make sure you understand the reason for not receiving a phase 2B award last year to make sure that you can at least figure out if you can address whatever that issue is. And you can only receive one second phase 2 award. So if you get a 2A award, you're not eligible to submit a 2B application in the future.
Also, to your point, you will receive the reviewer's comments, and basically you can, review those comments to see if there's something you need to improve on.
Yes, the comments are a very important part of evaluating your application in the event that you don't receive an award. Okay, so now I'm going to talk about the third phase 2 awards, or phase 2C. They are available. It is a congressionally mandated pilot program. And the intent of the program is reflected in the considerations the agencies must consider in making these awards. So these are the things you should be aware of when you're putting together your 2C application. The extent to which such award could aid the eligible entity in commercializing the research that has been funded. Whether the updated phase 2 commercialization plan submitted with the application provides a sound approach for establishing technical feasibility that could lead to commercialization. Whether the proposed activities to be conducted under the phase 2 commercialization plan improve the likelihood that research will provide societal benefits. Whether the small business concern has progressed satisfactorily in the phase 2, which would be an initial phase 2 and a second phase 2, to justify receipt of a third or a subsequent phase 2 award. The expectations of the eligible third-party investor, because the phase 2C does require matching funding, and the likelihood that the proposed activities to be conducted under the third phase 2 commercialization plan will lead to commercialization success and societal benefit. To apply for a phase 2C award, you must have received a phase 2 award and a second phase 2 award. The phase 2A or 2B will have been issued 2 fiscal years prior to the time of eligibility for a 2C. So you'll have one opportunity to the 2C, which would have been that your second phase 2 award was issued in fiscal year 2022. Phase 2C awards are limited by statute to the SBIR program. So no phase 2C awards are made under the STTR program. To be eligible, your phase 2 and 2A or 2B awards must both have been SBIR, not STTR awards. So here you are if you are considering the phase 2C application, then you must be right now completing a phase 2 award. Whether it's, I'm sorry, a phase 2A or 2B, you must be completing a second phase 2 award. So it immediately follows a 2A or a 2B award, and there's only one opportunity to apply for 2C.
And to your point again, I'm sorry.
Nope, go ahead.
To your point again, it has to be SBIR. The phase 2, the phase 2A or B would have had to have been SBIR and not STTR.
Yeah. So unlike all the other grants in our programs, phase 2C requires matching funds equal to the amount of the phase 2C award. And the matching funds must be from an eligible third-party investor, which means a small business concern other than the eligible entity, a venture capital firm, an individual investor, or a non-SBIR federal, state, or local government, or any combination thereof. An SBIR phase 1, 2, or phase 3 funding from a federal agency may not be used as matching funds. And then here are some lists of things that do not qualify as matching funds. In addition, the eligible entity's internal R&D fund, funding in forms other than cash, such as in-kind or intangible assets, funding from the owners of the eligible entity, its family members or affiliates of such owners, funding attained through loans and other forms of debt obligations. The small business concern must have the total amount of the matching funds available for expenditure at the grant start date listed in the FOA. A small business concern that fails to meet this requirement is ineligible for award. Your matching funds must also be contingent upon receiving the phase 2C award. The matching funds must be expended during the period of performance of the phase 2C award. Failure to expend the full amount of the matching funds will reduce the amount of award funding correspondingly, and DOE may take other actions. You may request a no-cost extension for your phase 2C award, but only if the award funding has not been fully expended at the end of the performance of the phase 2C award. The phase 2C award maximum amount is 1.1 million. Duration is up to 2 years. These require the requested amount and duration require justification. There's no separate funding for this. Again, it's all from the SBIR, STTR pot of money. And in this case, SBIR only. And but we are not allowed to use more than 5% of our SBIR funding for phase 2C awards. There's no target number of awards, and it does depend on the number and quality of phase 2 applications received under this funding opportunity announcement. The phase 2C also has a letter of intent requirement, again, submitted via PAMS by Tuesday, November 7th. By 5 p.m. Eastern time. I guess you all here are experts on submitting letters of intent. Again, but in contrast with phase 1, no feedback is provided on the phase 2 letter of intent. Just like the other programs, you are eligible to receive phase 2C award only if your 2A or 2B award is completed by the start date, which is anticipated to be April 1st, 2024. So complete those second phase 2 awards if you're looking at receiving a phase 2C award. Okay, so thank you. That was my presentation. We'll go into Q&A mode here. A few reminders. We do have our Tech to Market advisor, Carol Rabke, who would be happy to chat with you about your partnering needs. You may check out our new partnering resources page, and we are launching a partnering site as well. It's just rolling out, I think, this week. We will be starting, we'll have 4 Q&A webinars on the application process. You will receive an invitation to these. They will be November 1st, 8th, 22nd, and 29 at 3 p.m. Eastern time. Check your inbox. The invitations will go out in the next couple of business days. You can always email us with questions about the application process. Make sure you're on our mailing list, and please follow us on X and LinkedIn. And if you have questions about TABA, we have our commercialization tech to market advisor, Dave McCarthy. He'd be happy to answer any questions you have as you're putting together your application about TABA. So that's it. And Zena, I'm going to hand it over to you to start moderating the Q&A, if that makes sense.
So do you want me to start the
Why don't you
Q&A?
go ahead? Yeah, why don't you want to read the Q&A questions?
Okay,
Carl?
all right, that'll be good. Okay, so the first question is question regarding phase 2C or page 16 of the FOA. It states that the commitment letter from investors must include a statement that the investor is not a current owner of the small business prior to the investment, or a family member or affiliate of the owner. Does that mean that the investors for phase 2C cannot be current investors of our business that provide an additional investment, or is this statement referring to the original owners / founders of the business?
Carl, do you want to answer that question? Otherwise, my answer would be for this person to email us with the specifics.
Well, I mean, basically, I think the individual has stated exactly who cannot be an investor. He's listed out the individuals who cannot be investors. Now, we can take a deep dive to find out if the statement about who's eligible or not eligible would apply to the original owners or founders of the business. But if they're owners of the business, then I don't think they can be investors.
Right. It doesn't
again,
say original owners. It says owners, a current owner.
Yep.
So hopefully that helps. Go ahead, Carl.
Yeah, no, I'm going. I agree. Basically, if there's a problem, if you do not feel that this is an adequate response, then please send us an email and we'll, provide more information.
Thank you.
Okay, the next question is, how extensive are the phase 2 peer plans? I just wrote peer plan for the phase 1s. Will the general language be appropriate?
Yeah, that sounds fine. We do anticipate that since phase 2 is a bigger project, that there may be additional effort expended in this area, and your peer plan will be somewhat expanded over your phase 1 peer plan. But the activities and strategies can be similar. Hopefully that answers your question.
Very good, thank you. The next question is, currently we have a no-cost extension of our phase 2 that will end in May 2023. Can we complete the no-cost extension earlier to fulfill the rules? What should we do?
Carl, I think can they do that? Do they have to resubmit that they would like to. Do you mean, you must
Well, I
mean
mean,
May 2024? I'm going to assume that means May 2024. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think you're right. Basically, the question was dealt with May 2023. So I'm sure it should be May 2024. And if you're planning to submit, you would have to complete your no-cost extension. So
Do they have to submit a new request, NCE request, or how does that work? And I see there's another question two down that's very similar. So
right. So basically, what you can do is change the duration of your no-cost extension. You'd have to submit that. So basically, I would have communication with your program manager to let them know that you're interested in terminating or ending your no-cost extension earlier than was originally proposed or allowed. But again, if you have questions about it, please send me an email. Going forward, what if the letter of intent is non-responsive? Still no reply. We do not designate the letters of intent for the phase 2 submissions as responsive or non-responsive. As Eileen mentioned earlier, the letters of intent are used to help us line up the reviewers for your phase 2 when you submit, but we do not, unlike phase 1, we do not provide feedback as far as whether or not the letter of intent is responsive or non-responsive, primarily because your phase 1 was awarded. And therefore, we would assume that your research or your technology is responsive to the topic that you submitted to. Okay, going forward, can existing no-cost extension that is scheduled to go past April 1st, 2024 be shortened to allow for applying for phase 2B? It is necessary to complete this by proposal submission, when award decisions are made, or when the new period of performance begins. And I think you had addressed this on one of your earlier slides.
Yeah, so we just answered this question that you do have to shorten it to make sure that it doesn't go past the April 1st date. And let's see, there was another part to that question. And you need to complete it by 4/1/24 when your new grant starts, not when the submission, not when the applications due or when award decisions are made. It's when the grant starts.
Very good, thank you. Next question. Can you clarify the sentence that phase 2 awards from other agency? I'm sorry. DOE SBIR initial phase 2 awardees are eligible to receive a second phase 2 award from DOE if they have not already received a second phase 2 award from another agency. I know that we allow phase 1 awardees the opportunity to submit a phase 2 to the DOE SBIR program if the topic is similar to the topic that we have. I'm not clear as far as the second phase 2 award.
Yeah, I think my interpretation of that is that if you are applying for if you have received a second phase 2 award from another agency based on your DOE phase 2 award, then you cannot get 2 second phase 2 awards coming out of the same phase 2 grant. One from another agency and one from DOE, if that makes sense.
Well, I think to clarify, I think they're asking if they received a phase 2 award from another agency, if they're eligible to submit for apply to DOE for second phase 2.
So so it's not that I would not interpret this as saying if you've ever received a second phase 2 award from another agency, you cannot apply to DOE. I think it means that you cannot receive a second phase 2 award from different agencies that are based on the same initial phase 2 award. Does that make sense?
I agree.
Okay.
Next question, are phase 2B applicants eligible to request TABA funds?
Yes.
Yep. Next question, can you provide an example of a funding commitment for phase 2B? How's commercial traction measured for phase 2B if there's no product sales yet? Yeah, that's an interesting question.
Yeah. I mean, indications of commercial traction can be lots of different things other than product sales. I mean, you could have letters of support. You could have a subject matter expert write a letter to say why they think your technology is significant and has potential for commercial success. You could have letters from beta testers of your technology that are very interested in testing it. So it doesn't necessarily have to be product sales, but it could be information from the industry on why this technology is of interest, or interest from investors as well. So those are some examples. Hopefully that helps.
And to Eileen's point, if you submit for phase 2B, that means you've completed your phase 2 research successfully and you're ready to move on towards commercialization.
Okay, the next question was just clarification that we were right, that it was 2024.
Okay, so the next question is, if we applied last year for phase 2A and it was declined, can we apply this year for phase 2B?
Yes, I put up the slide that shows this exact same question, so there you go. Are there any other questions? We can stick around for another minute or two, but right now there's no more questions in the Q&A. We are available to answer questions by email, so you can always reach out to us, and there are the Q&A webinars are coming up, so you can always jump on a call and ask us more questions. So with that said, I'm going to hand it back over to Zena to close out the webinar.
Thank you, Carl and Eileen. As indicated at the beginning of this webinar, this webinar is being recorded, and we will post the recording along with a copy of the presentation on SBIR website under the Funding Opportunities webpage. Also, we will be sending the email today regarding the cybersecurity webinar. So please look for that email and register via the registration link. Thank you for attending, and have a good weekend.